A happy moment is a boulder that you push up a hill. You gotta juggle it. It sucks when you refuse to chill. And they be faking it on social, so is happiness real? Let go and let's explore what that can reveal. This is the Brunch Budget podcast with your hosts, Pamela Capalad, a certified financial planner and accredited financial counselor, founder of Brunch Budget, Pockets Change, and Sea Change. She's here to take the bite out of your budget.
And your other host, Dialect, director of pedagogy at Pocket Change and co-founder of Sea Change. He's here to change the way we talk about finance.
Recorded live-ish from Greenhouse Studios deep in the heart of planet Brooklyn. I didn't think of one.
I just realized that.
Let me see. Okay, I got it. Here we go. Here we go.
Ready.
Wait, 1, 2. You can leave this in. This is kind of fun. Let's talk about brunch, baby.
Oh,
let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the budgets, all the brunches that may be. Let's talk about brunch. Let's talk about brunch a little bit. Let's talk about brunch.
Well, you know a lot of
Let's
this
talk
song.
about...
I love it.
Yeah.
Wow, that was good. Way to pull it out. Claps for that. Hi, everyone. Today we are talking about...
Well, another fundamental, existential, difficult question.
Yeah.
Can money buy happiness?
Yeah. And we're here to argue that money can buy happiness.
You think money can buy happiness?
Maybe money can buy happiness.
I think money can buy happiness. I think the whole thing about money can't buy happiness, first of all, the idiom itself is a little bit overwrought, where I think it doesn't even mean like literally what it meant. But taking it literally and taking it figuratively, over this arc, we're going to be going over whether it can make us happy, what the statistics say, what the parameters of what happiness is.
Do you need to have money in order to get to the point where you're happy? And is money and happiness inextricably tied to other things?
Yeah, and then at the end, we will talk about what to do about and how to get shameless about it. But this is the first episode in the arc, so This is about what we need to know.
Yeah, part 1 in our arc is the know part. What are the key things you need to understand about this topic, the bigger systemic picture around it, and where the racial wealth divide fits in?
So I guess we should start with the beginning.
Yeah.
Right? Where they're like, money can buy happiness comes from.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because we tried to research where the phrase money can't buy happiness comes from, and there's like no real origin. But I feel like that it is a phrase that you hear all the time. You hear it. I don't know. There's this negative connotation around money, and, you know, I think that there's this backlash around like, hey, like money can buy you things, but it can't buy you what you're really looking for, right? And, you know, all those rich people who have all that money, they're not really happy.
Yeah, well, I guess we're going to get into all of the rationalizations and around all that stuff around it. I want to pull it back real quick and give you the quote. So, somewhere in the 1700s, he said, money can buy material things, but real happiness must truly be earned. And also in 1750, they have like exact date for this one, he said, money buys everything except for morality and citizens.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, yeah, so the quote evolved from there.
Well, there is an understanding that this quote predates him. Mm-hmm. This is just the first time someone of note has it written down. So, like, maybe this is attributable to Rousseau and it's spread from it, or maybe this is 100 years older. It seems like one of those things that people have been saying
for a while
as an excuse. More so, I think the things that have codified it into something interesting and some useful stuff is the great stuff about people and where we just do that. But I really think that this is more of a rationalization than anything. This idea that I'm unhappy because I didn't get something I wanted.
Yeah.
That had to do with money. And someone putting an arm around your shoulder and be like, it's okay.
It's okay. Money can't buy happiness.
Money can't buy happiness. Look at this other thing that you have that you didn't buy. Isn't
Yeah.
that nice?
Look at this thing that, you know, was non-monetary, right? That you figured out. Well, and it's interesting because I remember when we were talking about this, and we were talking about a lot of popular culture, a lot of popular stories and media are about this very thing, that money can't buy happiness, right? You mentioned Ebenezer Scrooge in the car, right? and this whole concept like this guy was super successful, he's super rich, he's the richest man in town, but he doesn't have happiness. You know, he gave up his first love, he gave up all his friends just so he could have all these material things.
Yeah, well, you know what? Let's get right into it with these images that they like to create. Because, like, we think of the Christmas story as like a positive story that's like, don't be greedy and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the lessons that it tells are kind of insidious. It talks about Ebenezer Scrooge being this rich cat who did all of a rich duck in the popular version, but a rich dude who's earned all of these things. You know, even making my joke about Scrooge McDuck. Scrooge McDuck is like this hard-working swashbuckler who remembers the first dime he earned out of nothing. You know, they present this idea that you are sacrificing the fun of life.
And the things that really matter, right? Like family.
Well, Tiny Tim and them, they had love.
Yeah.
They had family. They just didn't have, money to deal with, the whole silly things like filling your belly or dealing
fixing your leg.
Yeah, you had like polio or something?
Oh.
Was that the implication? I don't think they ever
don't
said,
know.
but it was like a, implied polio. So, you don't have health stuff.
Right, you don't have health care.
But you have family. So, you love love.
That's enough.
And they spent a lot of time and energy. You showed the poor people partying. Loving, laughing, hanging out. Those were things that lazy people do because they love and have fun. And there's like a inherent value to them, but it was presented as something that was different from being a hardworking, efficacious, and someone who's successful. So you can either be happy or
you could be successful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. And when we get into binaries, that's when we get into trouble, right? Yeah, and I think that story is like the perfect example of how so much pop culture is based around, hey, like, if you're poor, it's okay, right? You have all these other things. Money is not the reason. Yeah, money is not the reason why you're happy or unhappy.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think happens a lot in media whenever we get the reality that there's not going to be a lot of money for folks to have whenever rich folks start to consolidate more and more. It's why people find it ironic that you'll have Amazon or Disney or whatever put together a piece of art that is all about the underdog taking out a big system.
Yeah.
People are talking about the Star Wars show, and or I haven't even seen it, but like apparently it's like a really good rebellious story about heads who are trying to make a difference and how you can take down these evil corporations when the evil corporations are presenting them, because they're showing the virtue of being poor, of being the outsider, of being the one who's not rich, so that we don't want that stuff.
Yeah.
There's the man bites dog thing, right? Where they don't write a story about rich people being happy because plenty of them are. Plenty of them are content or neutral about their lives. But if there's a story about a rich person who is unhappy, since that is a rarer occurrence, we write stories about them. Because we write stories about them, we assume that they're not rare occurrences. Right.
When the reality is the reason why you tell a story is because it's something exceptional, right?
Yeah.
And something out of the ordinary. And so wow, that's real. You're right.
Saying.
Today's episode is sponsored by us, Brunch and Budget. Brunch and Budget is not just a podcast. It's a financial planning practice with a team of certified financial planners and accredited financial counselors ready to work with people who need a safe space to talk about your finances. Many of our clients come to us because someone or something made them feel bad about their money. We are the antidote to that. We do all our financial planning and coaching through a racial wealth equity lens, and we'll use our very own 5 stages to financial legacy to show you how far you've come and where you're headed. Go to brunchandbudget.com to learn more. I want to get into the research around money being able to buy happiness, or, this notion that money can buy happiness. There was a stat that came out of a research study in Princeton. In 2010, you might remember this, where the number 75,000 was thrown around, where Princeton did this study where they found that, like, once you hit $75,000 worth of income, then everything else after that is just diminishing returns, or like every dollar after that point, like, doesn't make you any more happy, right? And so 75,000 became this magic number that people wrote about for years, actually.
Yeah. No, I'm very familiar with it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that's why. What's the Dan Price company?
That's exactly why. No, he raised everyone. Gravitas, Dan Price's company.
That's the name of it. Yeah.
Former, I guess he stepped down as CEO, but
right.
but he increased the minimum salary at his company to $70,000 and decreased his own salary to $70,000 as well. Yeah.
So everybody else got to find that extra $5 somewhere else.
Well, probably health insurance.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, right.
$75,000.
There you go with the insurance part. Right, because it's $70,000 in real salary.
Yeah. Yeah. So in that sense, like they get hundreds of applications for every position, maybe even thousands for every position, and people are happier at that company. But that magic number was recently debunked in a 2021 study by Penn University.
Yeah, this Penn study is dope.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So the Penn study came from Professor Killingsworth, who gathered data over a 7-year period in real time from tens of thousands of people across wide ranges of income. I'm reading this from a CNN article that detailed the study. And what's interesting about this...
And by the way, the ranges of income was from minimum wage to $500,000.
Yeah, so it was a lot, right? What's interesting about this is the way that he collected data. One, it was from 30,000 different people. So it was a pretty huge sample size.
Yeah.
And also, he created a happiness tracking app. So what he did was the app would just ping you at random times throughout the day or throughout the week and ask you, are you happy? Right? And what he wanted to try and quantify was day-to-day happiness. So what he found, and they have this thing that I thought was really interesting. There's a Vice article that delineates experienced well-being versus evaluative well-being.
So like the experienced is what happens in the moment, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm experiencing.
I'm happy right now.
I'm
Yeah, the
feeling it.
day-to-day happiness. Exactly, yeah. And so you're like, okay. And then the other measure was evaluative well-being.
So that's like, am I surveying my existence?
Yes. Am I generally happy?
Right. Am I a happy person? That's like, ooh, that's such a harder one to say.
Yeah. And so Princeton study measured both experienced and evaluative and kind of lumped them together.
Right.
And Killingsworth study, the Penn University study, actually focused on experienced well-being. And he found in his data that every dollar does make you more happy. There is a level of diminishing return. But the way that he described it was, each dollar buys a little less happiness. So if someone earning $20,000 a year gets a 10% raise and someone earning $200,000 a year gets a 10% raise, these data predict that they'll deliver the same increment of happiness. And what that means is like, a jump of $2,000 for someone who makes $20,000 is a game changer, right? But another $2,000 for someone who has $200,000 of income.
Yeah, but like, isn't diminishing returns the law of literally everything?
Yeah, basically.
There's nothing where you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm going to continue. Everything has a point where, okay, you're getting too much of this.
The thing about the Princeton study, I think that was debunked was that 75,000 was like the hard line. After
Right,
that,
yeah.
it completely plateaued. And Killingsworth was like, no, it doesn't. Not really at all. It's still like pretty in lockstep. It's just that the diminishing returns that Princeton claimed, this Penn University study said it's not that diminishing. It doesn't plateau. It doesn't, it doesn't fall off a cliff.
It's funny. I read a lot. I'm a bit of a study reader cat, and the thing that I've found from scientists is they talk a lot about how there are many published popular studies that go along with what the status quo desires, and it's so ill when I see stuff like, I remember when that came out and they're like, all you need is $75,000. Just, set your ambitions to like a low point. You just want to get a good coding job and then you're going to be okay. And there was this chilling effect with it. And just looking at the study itself, it looks baked in. It looks like, all right, excuse me a second here, coming from, being an underground rapper, but like, it looked like a pop song.
Oh.
It was symmetrical and even in ways that this other study, this Penn study, isn't. This Penn study is messier. It's more sprawling. It deals with a lot more easy to have problem with things. Like, oh, you ask them their happiness at random moments. Well, what about all the other variables that could be happening? Blah, blah, blah. There's so many data points and so much stuff. It's a big, messy study that feels more real.
Yeah.
It feels like that great underground song where there's a 37-bar verse that, maybe it's a little too long, but they were speaking their feelings, right? That's what it feels like. And the other one very much sounds like what I've read about a lot is something that worked backwards. We have this...
They wanted to get to a number.
Yeah, we have this idea of a number or like a range of numbers.
Wouldn't it be great if there was just like a number?
And, mixing together the experiential and the evaluative and taking the idea of diminishing returns and setting a hard line makes it easier for a story.
Yeah, it does. Well, totally. It's like a great headline, right? And it's one of those things that feels concrete. Like that study was over a decade ago, and I feel like I haven't forgotten that number.
Yeah.
I knew that number as soon as I was starting to research this episode. I knew to look that up, And so I think that's one of the things. There's a couple things about this whole idea of income in general. And, in looking at it through a racial wealth divide lens is it's not taking into account wealth at all. Like when I read these studies, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But like, you don't take into account someone's net worth. You don't take into account someone's debt load, right? You don't take into account the other circumstances in their finances that have to do with this. You're just measuring one thing. And when we talk about the racial wealth divide, the reason why that word is so important, wealth, is because when you have more resources that are just ready for you, regardless of your income, then you are able to take care of more things.
Yeah, and I think about the 75 grand and black parents. Because they be telling you, I mean, maybe other ethnicities, y'all be getting this too, but like I think about the government jobs. I think about the garbage workers and the mail delivery, being a truck driver. All these jobs that, and although truck drivers can make you more than this kind of money, but like I'm, also thinking back my old behind of when that was considered good money. These were considered the types of jobs that you should do instead of dreaming.
Yeah.
I was going to say frivolous and also and dreaming at once. Frivolous, dreaming. So being frivolous, dreaming, thinking of things outside your station. These are attainable, good things that will make you happy.
Around that. Well, and what's interesting now that you say that is the average household income in this country is $69,000. So they're like, just a little bit more will make you happy. That's it. That's all. You just ask for a little bit more money and you'll be fine, right? When the reality is that so many things in terms of social services are currently getting taken away from us.
Although if that average is mean, it's skewed, right? That's not.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how I think it's median household income.
Oh, okay, median household.
Yeah, I have to double check. But
is that right?
I wrote that in an article somewhere.
Today's episode is sponsored by us, Pockets Change. At Pockets Change, we offer in-person and virtual workshops for students from grade school to grad school, professional development for educators and administrators, and jams for the whole family to learn, unlearn, and unpack. We use hip-hop pedagogy in the classroom to meet students where they're at, and hip-hop performance in the communities to dispel myths and create new common sense around money. For some free resources, go to pocketschange.com/toolkit and sign up for our newsletter. Let's change the way we talk about finance.
So you looked it up?
I looked it up. The census. We got, so in case you want to know, it's the census. If people misreported that they did it to the census, it's official.
It's official.
It's 69,600 is and it's the median.
It's median, not average. I was a little bit wrong.
Not the mean.
It's the middle. It's the very middle.
The median is a type of average, so I think that's
fine. It is. But it is a very important distinction because I like the idea. I think a median is a more accurate measurement, especially when it comes to income.
We'll ask Diedrich about this. Diedrich
we
Asante.
should.
Y'all know Diedrich Asante Muhammad, who holds us down. He is a real solid expert on why stuff
we use
matters.
Median and not average. But regardless, 69,000 is very close to 75,000. It's very suspiciously close to 75,000.
Well, it's basically because when we look at the numbers here across America, there are some states doing better than others. Mm-hmm. And by the way, they only checked out one territory. It was Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico's is 21,000.
That's their median income, y'all.
21,000. That's really not great. I grew up in the Virgin Islands where we look up to Puerto Rico. So those numbers are probably not as good.
Yeah.
Well, the point I'm making is, when you look at a number of states where they're not being serviced well by the people who run them, by the businesses, by the government, you'll see the 50s,
Yeah.
or low 60s. So it looks like for most of America, it's not that this is just a little bit ahead. It's that this is that big raise.
Yeah, that's $20K
that
more.
One promotion.
Yeah.
That better job across the way.
Yep.
It's not a dream. It's not the lottery ticket. It's not knocking out the heavyweight champ and you're Rocky. No, it's getting one step further.
Yeah.
So that's what, when you're talking about what you're suspicious about, I think that's a thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think the thing overall that kind of bothers me about these studies is that they don't look at your whole financial picture, right? Like we were talking about we talk about the difference between income and wealth a lot. And I feel like that when you don't take into account what someone's existing wealth is, right? Because when someone is making $50,000 a year, but has their family as a safety net, like they have a trust fund, like they have these other resources, they don't have any debt, they don't have to take out student loan debt, right? They have these other resources available to them that make $50,000 doable.
Yeah, there's stuff that is monetary and non-monetary around a $75,000 income person where they can be happy, and if not happy, at least content with what they have going on, or they can be in the space. Maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit on this, but like I think it's less important to know whether or not you're happy, and it's more to understand if you're in a space where you can even think about whether or not you're happy.
Well, that is exactly it. Like I feel like one of the articles that really resonated with me was this article from Harvard Business School. That is not about, it's interesting that they titled it More Proof That Money Can Buy Happiness or A Life with Less Stress. And I'm like, the article is not about that. The article is about how money can reduce your worries, right? The article is about you being able to like easily, like without thinking about it, like catch an Uber if it's raining or pay an unexpected medical bill or like pay a parking ticket or whatever it is you're able to like move through life differently because you have money. I don't know if that necessarily leads to happiness, but it does lead to less worries or less financial worries in that sense.
I guess that's a question for you, dear listener. Is free from worry something you can equate with happiness?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I guess more importantly, is there a distinction that matters?
Right. Well, because the article delineated 3 things. One thing they said is if we only focus on the happiness that money can bring, I think we are missing something. We also need to think about all of the worries that it can free us from, right?
So money can reduce intense stress.
Right.
Money can bring greater control. And higher incomes oftentimes lead to higher life satisfaction. And what's interesting about that is not only do they lead to higher life satisfaction, but they also lead to, longer lives. Mm-hmm. There's higher life expectancy for people who are older. And I mean, you could posit that it's because they are happier with their life, so they want more of it.
Right. And they think that is right. There's not an indirect correlation to that, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the quotes that I love is, it's not that rich people don't have problems, but having money allows you to fix problems and resolve them more quickly, right? And the question is, when problems come your way, to what extent do you feel like you can deal with them, that you can walk through life and know everything is going to be okay? And that is certainly a piece of happiness, right? Is knowing that things are going to be okay. And having that understanding. But, I'm curious, like going back to the Scrooge McDuck example, mm-hmm. right? And this implication that like this family, regardless of their income or their wealth, there was a sense that they knew everything was going to be okay, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. right? Even though, the guy got fired by Scrooge, lost his job, lost his income, he came home to a loving family and they were depicted as very happy. And so I feel like the complexity of this and like what happiness means or what happiness is also something to consider, you know?
Right, let me, can I do one of my things?
Do one of your things.
So a lot of the stuff that they're basically saying about that, we're going to connect a few idioms about, this is going to be an idiom kind of arc.
I mean, this is an idiom. Money can't buy happiness, right?
Yeah, and this is also, when you're saying about like they're fine, they feel like they're going to be fine, there's another idiom that correlates with this, that's ignorance is bliss. There's this idea, And this has been going on at least as long as there's been colonialism, because there's been a lot of writing from colonialists about how happy these indigenous people are and how pleased with their little lives they are, because they don't know that there's more out there. The concept of more money, more problems is the idea that, I mean, the reality, all the problems exist.
Yes.
Whether you have money or not. But when you are poor, not only do you not have to deal with them because you don't have the money to engage in these situations, but you don't even know that they're real. They're all just dragons flying overhead, and you don't get to see the actual airplanes and air traffic control and smog and pollution and all that stuff until you have money, because moneyed people are educated and smart and care about the world. Poor people are akin to animals, and whatever type of way that we can put poor people in their place, where they feel like that they're animals, where they think that they shouldn't do more, then it's funny, like we started off, you were talking about duck, an anthropomorphized duck,
right?
But that duck is considered more of a real person than all the poor people whose stories we never hear.
Yeah.
When I get on the mic and I'm like, all right, let's get down.
I mean, down.
Let's lower our
No, but that
expectations.
is, I think that when we think about this phrase and why we're trying to question it is in this place that we've decided to live in, right? We are not, tribes that are not connected to this system, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not over here at this other extreme, like you mentioned before, right? That we talk about all the time of like, you can disconnect, you can choose to leave this world.
Right.
But if you have it and you're still here and you want it, then money is, I don't know what the amount is. It's so interesting that we did the How Much Is Enough arc like a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. But just like money in many measurable ways does lead to a level of happiness, right? Because not having worries, like you just said, means that you can think about what does make me happy? Not what do I need to do to survive, but what do I need to do to thrive?
Well, and this is maybe an education thing, but engaging with being happy or unhappy, it may feel on the surface like I'm experiencing more unhappiness because I'm engaging with it directly more, but what you're creating are happier outcomes by engaging directly with the moments and the systems that make you less happy.
Yeah.
To try to really whittle it down to when you're poor, there is the idea that people aren't thinking about it anyway, which we all know isn't true, but you don't have the time and the energy to deal with your unhappiness. So you have the unhappiness or you have a lack of happiness, but you wouldn't be likely to state it for a couple of reasons. For, the reason that you're just holding it all in so you can get through the day, and also because you grew up reading that story. You saw every version of A Christmas Carol, no matter what your denomination was. So you're like, yeah, well, then I should just be happy with those things that they told me because I've got those things.
It makes me think of be grateful for what you have, right? Speaking of other idioms, speaking of other things that people say. And I think that one thing that was really nice about that $75,000 number and hearing the median income of a lot of states, right, and the median income of the U.S. is it gave you a very clear answer to how much is enough. Because when we talked about how much is enough and we talked about needing to have more, there's a level of unhappiness. And we're going to go into this more in the next couple arcs when it comes to your feelings and what you can do about it. There's a great Time article about figuring out what the happiness level or what actually makes you happy and what money can do to get you there. But ultimately it comes down to how much is enough to make you happy.
Now, this is, I guess, journalistical failings, but we're not actually journalists, so it's okay if we fail. Looking at this census, it has me thinking about the markers for happiness and the ways that people in certain states vote in terms of grievances, in terms of uplifting your community to make things better, in terms of fixing problems. And these states, just super anecdotal, this is not, don't quote me on this about it, but the states that I'm seeing, oftentimes southern states, oftentimes red states, these are the ones with really low, they have really low medium income. And they're known for, again, this is not something that I have the stats on, but they're known for a lot of grievance voting. A lot of voting to blame some group for hardship. A lot of voting to remove a problem, and not a lot of voting for things like infrastructure. These are often the areas where I've had difficulty convincing people about things like the way that they give charitably. These are oftentimes, again, I'm speaking super broadly and I don't have the stats to back up that like these are the places that just do this more. But what I've experienced is these are often the kind of cats when you're saying, hey, can you donate to this thing that's going to help out people? And you're like, well, I want to make sure it's being given directly and doesn't go to the receptionist.
Yeah.
You know, those folks where grievance is at the top of their mind. So, again, not scientifical. We didn't do a study on that, but just looking real anecdotally, it looks like even if they're not able to state a lower level of happiness, that's apparent in their actions.
Yeah.
And so I really think that the median income, John, like you're saying,
It says a lot.
Yeah. Even though the 75 isn't a hard and fast number, I think it's a good, not a baseline, but a nice place to start.
Yeah,
as
exactly.
a loose gauge.
Well, and I think that the Penn University study, what they disproved is that 75,000 is the peak.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like 75,000 in looking at all of the infrastructure that does and doesn't exist, right? And the systems that do and don't exist is a good minimum, right? It's a good starting point. Because even the Gravity Payments company we're talking about where the minimum income is 70,000, that's not where people stay.
Yeah, I don't think that there is a state in this country where 75 is a terrible starting salary.
Yeah.
I think no matter where you're at, even like New York, Connecticut, California, all the like the biggest and their medium incomes are higher than 75 in those places. But having lived in New York most of my adult life, if I was starting to get 75 as a starting salary,
Yeah.
that's a job to go for. So yeah.
Yeah. So money can probably buy happiness is where we're at.
Money might be able to.
Money might be. Let's
Money might be able to
keep
buy.
exploring it.
Well, I think the big thing of it is in this episode we're getting to the nitty gritty of what happiness can be.
Yeah.
Is it momentary? Is it a long-term thing? And we found that in both cases, having more money gets you to a place where it's not just that you can be more happy.
You can start to think about it.
You can be more real.
Yeah.
I talk a lot about how people like to attribute things to sports and how sports isn't real life, but sports gets to do its thing. The reason why sports are great, y'all, despite what everybody tells you, because everybody tells you it's about the hustle and the hard work, the reason why sports are awesome is because of money. There is so much money that people can have integrity. They get really mad at cheaters and gamblers and stuff like that because they're like, dude, you're all millionaires.
Yeah.
All of y'all are millionaires. So y'all straight. So since y'all are good, then we can be real about this. We can be honest about who won and who lost and who's cheating and who's trying to do this and the other stuff because we've taken care of what they need.
Yeah.
We've gotten them
You
paid.
took care of the money. That's that.
You have the opportunity to be happy in a way that you wouldn't have that opportunity. There we go. Money doesn't guarantee happiness. Poverty or lack of money definitely does not guarantee happiness. And it restricts your opportunities for happiness. Doesn't mean that it's impossible, but it restricts your opportunities for happiness. Having money and increasing the amount of money and with no end, maybe some diminishing returns, enables opportunities for happiness. And I think that's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
We can talk more about how we feel in the next episode of the arc, and we're gonna see what we can do about it. But for now, let's get out. Let's get to some music. Should we do some music?
Let's do some music.
All right. So this first one, I'm gonna go a little differently than I usually do with y'all. We're gonna play a song that is not a rap song or even an R&B song. It's, I guess, rock and rolly. This person describes himself as a classic rock one-man band. This is Adult Cinema out of London in the UK with You Can Buy Happiness. I just thought what they were saying was really on theme with what we got going on, and the vibes wasn't too out of ours. So check that out, and we'll get back with you next time so we can get more money and more happy.
You can buy happiness, but it don't come cheap, you know. you can wait all your life for the things that never show. And you can spend days and nights looking for the one, when there's someone right next to you who loves you like a son. And you can stop hanging on to be somebody else, but love the person that you are with the hand that you are dealt. And you can wander back and forth, trying to prove that you are better than anyone. Yeah, that's what you can do.
Thanks for listening to the Brunch and Budget podcast. Please feel free to rate us, debate us, hate us, date us, infatuate us, something that means you like us but rhymes with 8. Say what's up. Tell us we make great stuff on Apple Podcasts or really anywhere that lets you comment, Reddit, YouTube. I don't know. Just tell somebody, like just knock on your neighbor's door. Subscribe, add us to your archives. Feel free to share any episodes that you think will help somebody out. Help us expand our circle so we can bring the real to more communities. If you got a song about money, financial systems, or how you feel about either, please send a link or MP3 to dialect@dialect.com. Figuring out how to spell it is your only real obstacle. We love some informational, intentional, influential songs from indie artists.